At 9, and Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Simon Steele? He's the Executive Secretary of the UN Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's a mouthful. The next 2 years, it's make or break it for the planet. Where have we heard this before? Essential to in saving our planet. We still have a chance to make greenhouse gas emissions tumble with a new generation of national climate plans, but we need these stronger plans now. That's what he said. The main task for the UN's climate negotiations in Azerbaijan is for countries to agree to a new target for climate finance to support developing nations struggling to invest in shifting away from fossil fuels and fighting climate change. Oh, you mean developing nations like China and India? We're going to need to come together with a plan to finance China and India so they could reduce their emissions by shifting away from fossil fuels as they're building coal-fired plants? Sure.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a good plan.
That's plausible. We need to help figure out a way to finance Bill Gates wanting to cut down millions of acres of forests in the Pacific Northwest to bury the trees to reduce climate emissions. Needed to finance the removal of cows, the replacement of them with camels or some such animal that has less methane emissions and so forth. 2 years and lots of cash. Same old playbook. They're just updating it, would seem to me. But let's ask our next guest. He is Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace, the author of Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom. Patrick Moore, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Nice to be back with you, Dan and Amy.
So, 2 years, and we got to come up with some cash. The backdoor Green New Deal in America is nice, but that's just the beginning.
CO2 emissions have increased again this year to a record level. This is a good thing because that's what plants want to grow. Our food and all our forests and all our wildland are benefiting from the emissions of CO2. CO2 is invisible. That is why they get away with claiming that it's harming the world, because no one can see it. And if you can't see it, you don't know it. It's a simple fact in science that observation is the most important part of discovery. You have to see it, and you can't see carbon dioxide. The fact is, every commercial greenhouse grower in the world pumps extra CO2 into their greenhouse to get 30 to 50 to even 70% increase in growth of the crops that they are growing for us to put on the table. And this whole thing about invisible is the real problem. You know what else is invisible? Radiation. And they're saying that nuclear power is a problem because of radiation. Well, you can't see it, so they can make up any story they want, and it's all a big lie.
But
For some reason...
Well, they argue you can't see it, but you can measure it. And so here are the measurements, and here are the projections. And we took these measurements and we put them in a model, and here's the projection. And if this projection is accurate, you know how it goes. The global temperature increases by X percent or by X degrees over the next 20, 50, 100 years. Then here's what we know will be the implications per the output of our models. And this is what drives all of the apocalyptic talk.
Yes, but the fact is, it is impossible to predict the future of things like CO2 and the effect it would have on the climate. We do know, theoretically, that even if it had some effect, it would be extremely small compared to water vapor, for example, which is also invisible, but which is one of the main drivers of the temperature of the Earth. Then there's clouds. Clouds are far more important in terms of warming and cooling. But the really actually hilarious thing about all this.
Hello?
Did we lose Patrick Moore?
Patrick, are you there? Or maybe he accidentally hit the mute button.
Or the UN climate chief did. All right, let's try to get Patrick Moore back on the line. We'll be right back.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
For over 23 years, Applied Mechanical Sales has offered boilers, water heaters, and exhaust venting to commercial mechanical contractors. They aid in the selection of standard and high-efficiency hydronic system equipment for replacement or new construction. From schools to churches to high-rises and hotels, Applied Mechanical provides high-quality, cost-effective Camus boilers and water heaters in many of Chicago's most iconic buildings. Mechanical design firms trust Applied Mechanical to support them by specifying the size and type of boilers to best match a building's load profile for the worst of Chicago weather conditions. Engineers and contractors can be confident that they'll experience trouble-free operation for the next 15 to 20 years. Applied Mechanical Sales ensures their boilers are properly installed and operate at peak efficiency long after the initial startup. Go to appliedmechanicalsales.com to schedule a site visit and boiler replacement assessment. That's appliedmechanicalsales.com.
The future of medicine is here at QC Kinetics. QC is the nation's leader in the most exciting revolution in pain management we've seen in decades. Regenerative medicine. If you're tired of achy joints, if your joint pain is keeping you from doing what you love, you need to call QC Kinetics today. Surgery, steroids, drugs, these are no longer your best options. Regenerative medicine at QC Kinetics is transforming lives with innovative treatment that delivers lasting results. QC Kinetics is under the leadership of National Medical Director Dr. Michael Scheinkupp. Dr. Scheinkupp is a pioneer in this field with 20 years of clinical work, research, teaching, and publishing. He wants to get you relief with a needle, not a knife. Call QC Kinetics now for a free consultation. Appointments now available on Saturdays. Call 312-809-5955, 312-809-5955. Again, that's 312-809-5955.
AM 560. The Answer.
All right, Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, rejoins us now. Patrick, we got you? We have Patrick?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay. You were just about to deliver a punchline and we lost you. So you were saying that the real funny thing about all of this apocalyptic talk and the projections and predictions and is what?
Well, Antarctica, for example, is 5 million square miles of ice, bigger than the United States, even including Alaska and Hawaii. 5 million square miles of ice. That's because we're in an ice age. And the North Pole doesn't have quite that much because it's a bit warmer in the Northern Hemisphere than it is in the Southern Hemisphere. But we are in an ice age. This is one of the coldest periods in Earth's history. Life did just fine when there was no ice on the Earth for 150 million years before this ice age set in. And it took 50 million years from the peak of the temperature, the Eocene thermal maximum. Look it up. It's a real thing. It happened 15 million years after the dinosaurs went extinct from an asteroid that hit the Earth, which was a lot more exciting than what's going on now. Right now, we are in a cold period. And actually, I'm in Baja, and I've been coming here for 25 years, and it's colder this spring than it has been since I started coming here. The ocean is still too cold to swim in. And so, but everybody's talking about how this is the worst heat that anybody has ever seen in the history of the planet. Well, since 1850, apparently.
So
there were quite a few years before 1850, like 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, and people should wake up and do some study. It doesn't take much. look up the Eocene thermal maximum, and you will find out that the Earth was much warmer and life was flourishing in Antarctica. There were forests there at one time. That was a nice period of time. The Sahara was green at one time. But when it gets cold, there isn't as much moisture in the air. There isn't as much rainfall in these areas. And the people who lived on the Sahara 8,000 years ago had to go into the Nile Valley, and that's where Egypt started. So, I mean, there's so many actual easy truths to convince you that this is not a hot period in the Earth's history. We know this for a fact. And computer models cannot predict the future. Climate is...
You've got your 50 million years, but Greta Thunberg, her climate strike is in week 296, and just last week Stockholm took a part in it, and they're demanding climate justice now, whatever that is. When you watch these movements and you see the protestations and the lists of demands and the pronouncements from lofty perches like the World Economic Forum, what do you think is going on?
What is going on is the use of fear of the future to control the population. It's as simple as that. You know, it wasn't that long ago they were burning witches. It wasn't that long ago that they were throwing virgins into volcanoes as a way to appease the gods, or whatever you want to say. And we still are a very primitive psychology and hierarchy of the people who, like Bill Gates, I mean, for goodness sakes, he wants to cut down forests and bury the wood.
Right.
The wood is what is absorbing the CO2. And let them grow. Don't cut them down and bury them. That's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And Bill Gates is one of the stupidest people that exists on this planet for having, he surely has had an opportunity to get a decent education with all his wealth. But
so the bottom line is you think they're all doing this, and like Bill Gates, just to maintain the population of the planet?
I have no idea what possible rationale there is for saying that we should make the Earth cooler than it is now, when you have 5 million square miles of ice on the southern pole, where there were forests not that long ago geographically, or whatever you want to call it. In terms of the time of the Earth, it's 4.6 billion years old, this Earth. And life began almost 4 billion years ago, maybe 3.75 or something like that. We don't know. There's two things we'll maybe never know. How did life begin, and is there any other life in this universe besides this planet? And most people think, well, of course there must be. Yeah, no. You can't say that if you don't know it, if you haven't seen it. You know, this is, people project the future when they have absolutely no clue what is going to actually happen. I mean, look at what's going on in the United States and Europe, Canada, a few other countries are trying to stop the increase of carbon dioxide emissions. Meanwhile, China is tripling theirs practically. I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't sad.
And
people
what
are falling in with this.
What should we make of, all of this anecdotal reporting is, this much of the polar ice cap has melted, but then there's other reporting about, well, this shoreline that was supposed to have disappeared by now has actually grown. All of this sort of one-off about either some animals' numbers or some iceberg or some island's shorelines or, amount of ice in the case of glaciers. We're supposed to divine real importance from these developments. How do we process that?
You process it by knowing that the warmest oceans in the world are in Indonesia, and there you have the highest number of corals and reef fish on the planet. So if the Earth warms, the reefs will expand, because the thing that is controlling their growth is cold water, not warm water. The Earth was much warmer 50 million years ago, and the coral reefs expanded over a much larger area. We know that for a fact, and yet they go on about how if the Earth warms, the coral reefs will die. No, if the Earth warms, the coral reefs will expand into the warm oceans that would be happening. But we have absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the Earth will continue to warm. We're in what is now a 300-400 year slight warming period called the modern warm period. The Roman warm period was warmer than it is now, and that was only 2,000 years ago. We are in now a 6,000 year slight decline in temperature, and if it matches up with the previous 2.5 million years of interglacial periods and then glacial maximum periods, we are headed now into the 80,000 year or so descent into the next glacial maximum. So you don't have to worry about your kids. It's not going to happen that fast. But in terms of the patterns that have been occurring during this Pleistocene Ice Age, you have this pattern of interglacial periods and then glacial maximums. There's been about 40 of them, and it appears very clearly in the record that we are headed into a downward trend for the next 80,000 years, if it follows the same pattern it did for the last 2.5 million, where it's very clear. We know that from Antarctic ice cores, from all kinds of proxies, that is the pattern that has been occurring on this planet since it went down into the Pleistocene Ice Age, which we arbitrarily call 2.6 million years ago. That's
right.
Where we say, okay, now we're in an ice age, and we've been in it ever since.
All right. Well, we'll keep updating this every couple thousand years with you to see how this is tracking along. Patrick Moore,
that's a fine riposte you have.
Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, his book "Fake Invisible Catastrophes and Threats of Doom." Patrick Moore, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Come on with this, people. Move it!
Did you really think you could make that company deliver yourself?
Oh, I cannot handle any more traffic.
You could be getting much more done at your place of business.
I've wasted 45 minutes and now this place is gonna close.
Time is money. Let Quick Delivery Service take on the traffic hassle for you. They'll deliver almost anything, from large pallets of materials to important documents, or both. No forms, no labels.